of like Vanessa Gielen. And also our latest one, Angelina Resendez. And so, let's see. There we are. Our mission right now is to bring awareness of MST that's going on in our military families. Because as Rick said, he's a veteran, I'm also a veteran obviously, and I'm a survivor of military sexual trauma. And it was really troubling to me to see what went on with Vanessa Gielen back in 2020 because Fort Hood was my second and my last duty station. I chaptered out after that. And our purpose, educate, power, and connect to resources. VetMAST over the past 2 years has become part of Wake County Domestic Violence Task Force, as well as Zeta Mi Chi of North Carolina Domestic Violence Committee. We're also registered with North Carolina Coalition Against Sexual Assault. We're in the process of working with a partnership with Shining Light in the Darkness, which is domestic violence as well as sexual assault. And also connecting with, we just connected in partnership with Empower Dance and Movement Schools so that children of MST survivors can get dance lessons for free. MST is not limited to rape, sexual assault. There is also sexual harassment. There is also the power, and anyone who is familiar with chain of command, I don't know how many military or veterans we have in here, but anyone is familiar with chain of command and things that can happen within our military services and how things are reported. Because, an example, the latest case, Angelina Resendez, her assailant had a report filed against him for sexual assault by a civilian before he went in the military. And then his pattern continued to escalate in the military, in the Navy, to where days before Angelina was killed, he had sexually assaulted or assaulted another civilian on the ship. Other seamen had intervened on that behalf of that civilian. And so there was a paper trail, but they just kept moving him around. He had actually sexually assaulted another seaman, and he videoed it. So his behavior escalated, which is what we see common in the military. The ripple effects of MST's lasting impact: PTSD, depression, anxiety, moral injury, suicidal ideation. There's no difference between genders, male or female. I've heard stories of men who, one in particular, he was sexually assaulted by his roommate. And he did go to the chaplain and request, but it took the military 6 months before they pulled that man out of his room and gave him a different assignment. He was going to bed every night armed. And so, of course, you can imagine what the traumas and everything, because a lot of men do not come forward with military sexual trauma. I know of 3 personally. And this is, as we see, it's a big dynamic. And we honestly don't hear about the stories of MST until there's a death. Shared experience and empathy, the power of peer connection and validation. One of the things we're working on in Breaking the Silence is partnering with the Shining Light in the Darkness nonprofit. We're in the process of creating a virtual MST support group, which will be able to reach a lot more people, especially virtually, because there's a lot of veterans throughout North Carolina. North Carolina has it's the largest state with military installations. We have 11. Surprisingly. VetMAST, we create awareness, support survivors, and we advocate for rights of those impacted. We envision a world where everyone, veterans and survivors, are taken care of. With VetMAST, the whole project with this is to take care of the whole family unit, not just the veteran, but his partner, his or her partner, and their children. Because from my own personal journey, I see what my PTSD has done to my children. One, I wasn't properly diagnosed, although I did go to a civilian mental health facility after I got out the military because I said something was wrong. But this is like, you're talking about in the mid-90s, 1995, before military sexual trauma was really on civilians' radars. And so it wasn't until 1998 when I was able to go to the VA that I was then diagnosed with PTSD due to MST. But of course, I relocated down here in North Carolina in '99, which led to a whole different dynamics when it came to my treatment. One of the biggest things is the role of our healthcare providers, support staff, sensitive screening, MST history, and making appropriate rapid referrals, specialized MST services. One of the things that recently came on my radar is that PTSD symptoms can also mirror ADHD, which is something that has been new. When you're a trauma-exposed person, you take on the symptoms of PTSD. And a lot of us, ADHD, a lot of us are not aware of that. I just recently found that out myself. And then also, one of the other things that came on my radar recently in conversation with someone in healthcare was that military sexual trauma is no different than being sexually assaulted in the civilian sector, which is totally incorrect. Because when you're in the military, they control every move you make. Anyone who knows that is familiar. They control where you live, when you eat, when you sleep, where you go, where you don't go, where you can and you cannot go. They have complete, utterly control of what you do. In civilian sector, you can wake up and say, I quit. In the military, you cannot say you quit because you look up and you're AWOL and your MPs are arresting you. So there's a big difference. You can file charges, civilian charges, in civilian sector. In the military, they pick and choose how they want to handle these things. Again, I'll go back to Angelina Resendez. Her assignment just got passed along the ranks. And then now, here we are. When you're dealing with someone with military sexual trauma, listening empathetically, which is also very good, because a lot of us don't speak up, don't speak out. It wasn't until I joined recreational therapy, therapeutic writing out of the VA in Durham that I was accompanied or in-house with a lot more veterans, which is where this passion also arose from, because I was hearing the stories and I was hearing the different veterans say that we need to start speaking out in our communities, letting everyone know what's going on in our military. And so I decided to take on this journey since I had connections such as Pastor Rick, who already has a nonprofit and is also a veteran. We offer the resources, can't fix anybody, but you can be a supporting ear. You know, a lot of veterans, we isolate. I'm good for that, real quick. Isolate, shut down, it's a whole, it's a work. There's a lot of stigma and shame about sexual assault in general. But when you're in the military, and one story came to my attention was that military personnel were aware that this young lady had been sexually assaulted. The guy was walking around bragging about it. Nothing was done. They ended up putting her out due to she was in the Air Force, due to how her uniform was looking. That's what they did. She just completely was gone, she wasn't there. And that's how the Air Force handled it. Also, because this person came from, he used to take the reports of MST in the military. But he was also told after writing those reports to throw them away. So these victims never got any justice. Although certain things were put in place to assist with investigation, assist with reporting, they are not gone due to DEI. It was already trouble before those things were diminished, but now it's worse. So we're going to see less reporting. As a matter of fact, in the military, they can't even mention military sexual trauma.
When you say they can't even mention, who you referring to?
Military, from what my understanding was.
So like leaders and stuff, or like if someone's assaulted?
For instance, like my MICAI group, we did an MST luncheon. One of the women, her children are military. And when she spoke to her children about what we were doing, she said, we can't even mention military sexual trauma in the military anymore. Here are some resources for you guys. Y'all can always reach out to the VA and have the MST coordinators, which I always suggest. For me, I hate to say this, but there's a big difference between Fayetteville VA and Durham VA. when I was living here in Fayetteville and I was going to the VA in Fayetteville, I did not know anything about cognitive processing therapy. I did not know anything about DBT, which is dialectical behavior therapy. I think I said that right. It wasn't until I was under the VA system that I learned about those things, that I really got the help that I needed starting 11 years ago. Living here in Fayetteville, I did things like individual therapy. I did MST support group, but no real treatment. So now I'm aware of things and stressors and triggers, because we used to battle when we worked together, surprisingly. But I didn't realize that he was triggering things in me. I just knew I would get irritated. And of course he didn't know, because I didn't know. And so this is where taking on the family aspect as well, because a lot of times veterans don't understand what they're going through. And so of course you can imagine the partner, the wife, husband, as well as children, they truly do not understand. Which is why with VetMAST, we were like, okay, we want to be different. We want to work with the whole family unit. Because again, like I said, my children, my son was 5 when I went in the military. And then by the time I got to full hood, I had my oldest daughter, so they're 7 years apart. My son came back to me, because got divorced while I was in there. He came to me, and of course, mommy wasn't mommy anymore. I had PTSD and didn't realize it. I had this newborn and was dealing with depression and didn't know what depression was, because in the 90s, the early 90s, you didn't hear about mental health like you do nowadays. So I had no idea. I was a single soldier with 2 kids and just depressed and had anxiety. I ended up, real quick, I went to Fort Hood after Germany to have my daughter, and moved into a place. I was there 2 months before I had her, but I moved into a duplex, and at nighttime I couldn't sleep. I'm 7 months pregnant. I'm up all night long fighting my sleep, but as soon as I got daybreak, I could go to sleep. That was the first time that I could even recognize PTSD symptoms. I ended up breaking that lease. I ended up breaking it. Moving into a townhouse where I felt safer. I wasn't so easily accessible as I was in a ranch type situation. The vet center is very good. When veterans go to the vet centers, everything is private. I mean, you literally are going to have to get a court order to get those records. So a lot of veterans feel comfortable going to the vet center, where it's the opposite with the VA. Anything that the VA puts in your records, people have access to. Because I know when I was going through my legal stuff, vet center was like, okay, these are the dates she was seen. This is what she was seen for. And this is, but as far as the VA, they give the whole rundown. They give everything. They're very detailed. Now, the VA cannot see the vet center's records, but the vet center can see the VA's records. North Carolina Coalition Against Sexual Assault, they've been very instrumental in me understanding how to approach people like myself who have been sexually assaulted, from children to adults. Because unfortunately, even in the military, our children are also affected. A lot of times we don't hear those stories. We would love for anyone to join our movement. We love to have volunteers, because it's just me and Pastor Rick for now. And we would love anyone who's interested in doing some acting, especially the men, because Pastor Rick has written a skit. But because we didn't have enough men to participate with it, it didn't get performed. So anyone interested, please let us know, or reach out to us if you know someone. Any Q&A?
I would just add, because I work for the vet center, and so just with the law enforcement, we also serve active duty, and so they also come to us for the same reason, because it's confidential. Their chain of command doesn't find out, because a lot of soldiers who are active, they don't want to go to mental health because of the stigma or clearance, things like that. So it's also another resource. The vet center can see active duty members, because veteran status technically is when you're no longer actually serving. So they can still be on active duty and come to the vet center. And as she said, VA doesn't know about it, DOD doesn't know about it. And so that's a good resource in the vet center.